All right, guys. Good morning. Thank you for coming to my radicalization project and just going over it briefly with me today. So here's just a little overview of the things I'm going to be touching on. I'm just going to go over the introduction, overview of the person's profile, the types of radicalization, and how to effectively address this kind of radicalization. So today, I'm just going to be going over Boko Haram, right? They're a religious group that I'm sure everybody's sort of familiar with, or they've at least heard. But they're a religious terrorist group, mostly concentrated in the Sahel region of Africa, to include Nigeria, Chad, Burkina Faso, Mali, mainly just Central African countries. They're just a group, like many other terrorist groups, that blame westernization negatively impacting Islamic values. They were formed in the early 2000s by a man named Mohammed Yusuf, and then over time they became more increasingly radical in their beliefs, and then in 2009 they started kind of ramping up their attacks and had militant engagements with the local military and police forces, where Mohammed Yusuf died and Mohammed Shekau took over. And then eventually kind of the group began to get a little too radical, and they split into different groups and started pledging allegiance to other groups such as ISIS. But today I want to discuss this man right here, Abu Bakr Mohammed Shekau. So he was born in 1973 in the Yobe state of Nigeria. He was a pretty well-educated man, earning a college degree in Islamic studies and law, but he quickly became known for his aggressive kind of personality and more radical views. And then in around 2004, as you can see, he joined Mohammed Yusuf, who was the original inceptor of Boko Haram. And at first, when they joined the group, the two promoted Sunni Islam and Sharia law through peaceful preaching, right? But over time, Yusuf's rhetoric kind of began to shift, and he kind of began to denounce democracy, Western education, and other religious sects, including Christian and Muslim minorities. So what started as more of a religious movement evolved into kind of a violent insurgency fueled by socioeconomic frustration and growing discontent among Nigeria's marginalized community. And then in 2009, following Yusuf's death, during clashes with Nigerian forces, Shekau assumed leadership of Boko Haram. Under his control, the group grew pretty dramatically and more violent and extreme, right? Boko Haram has since been responsible for over 15,000 deaths, countless suicide bombings, kidnapping of children, attack on religious and civilian targets, and the confrontation with local and international military forces. Their overarching mission became to overthrow the Nigerian government and the establishment of a hardline kind of Islamic state throughout the Lake Chad basin. But the types of radicalization that I just like to go over briefly to understand better how Shekau reached this point, I want to look at the psychological theory of incrementalism, or also known as slippery slope. So this concept explains how individuals gradually adopt extreme beliefs through a series of small, often unnoticed behavioral shifts. So Shekau didn't begin as a terrorist. Instead, through consistent exposure to radical beliefs, primarily from Yusuf, he slowly became more extreme. And then over time, he adopted stricter interpretations of Islamic law and supported more violent methods, leading to the formalization of Boko Haram from the earlier Yusufia movement. And then to continue this, I want to talk about group polarization as well. So another critical concept, which is group polarization, is the tendency for people within a group to adopt more extreme views than they would as individuals. So in Shekau's case, he gained influence and status within Boko Haram by consistently advocating for more radical action. So as the group grew and the new members began to join, they reinforced each other's extreme viewpoints, which further accelerated their shift towards violence. So the internal competition and shared grievances created an environment where extremism was rewarded and moderation was sidelined. So what can be done from this, or how to address this? So countering this kind of radicalization requires a very multi-layered approach. Government agencies, especially intelligence and security sectors, must stay alert and deeply understand the psychological underpinnings of extreme behavior. At the same time, NGOs, education initiatives, and community-based programs must be active on the ground, especially economically and socially vulnerable areas. Providing access to education, aid, and alternative narratives can help interrupt recruitment processes, particularly for young people at risk. Research also shows that empathy and shared human experiences can reduce support for violence. Reminding individuals of common challenges or global issues rather than focusing on division can open the door for peace building. But in conclusion, Shekau's radicalization wasn't sudden. It was gradual and fueled socially. So by understanding psychological mechanisms such as incrementalism and group polarization, we can begin to develop better strategies that prevent violent extremism and promote long-term stability in vulnerable regions. But other than that, this is what we went over today. And if you guys have any questions, just let me know. Thank you for your time and appreciate it for you being here.